You have yours connected, dude?
That is.
Make sure you have yours connected.
Mine's on mute.
All right, you guys got us now? There we go.
Yes, sir.
So what happens, Jake and I have been taking the roles of like who's running the show, because Jake, is so busy with the dev stuff. It's like we're getting a little bit mixed up on the back end. But can you guys hear us okay now?
Sounds like it.
Yeah. It's you, Jake. You're connected, dude.
Yep, little push back on Jake, but sounds good.
Disconnect your make sure you're off totally. What's up, guys? Adam, how you doing, man? Good to see you again. Thanks for coming on, man. Excited to get into some details, man.
Yeah, I'm doing well. And yeah, excited to be here. Glad to talk to you guys again.
So you got to tell us what's the 10.0 update. That means like you've had 9 other updates, major updates. What separates kind of 10.0 on like what's happening? Like, can you give us a brief overview of like the main differentiator that this update's doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a major refactor. The reason it's 10.0 is we use a versioning scheme called semantic versioning, and 10.0 means that we are changing the schema of the database behind the scenes. We're moving to a log structured database, and we're using SQLite for sort of the state of the Counterparty network. And the reason we're doing that is it is one element of the major refactor that dramatically improves the performance, the stability, the simplicity of the code base. And we've made a bunch of other major changes to performance, to bug fixes, to consensus, to testing, etc., to really bring the Counterparty core code base up to speed, to 2024, and prepare for a lot of future development.
So give me the like baby
yeah.
steps, like, non-technical for people who, have Counterparty assets. First of all, does it affect them in any way? And second, give us kind of like not much. Okay.
Yeah, not much. It's not a lot of user-facing stuff. It's a lot of preparation work. That said, it does fix a lot of bugs and a lot of performance problems, which may or may not have been perceptible to end users. So, for instance, up until this release, for the past few years, it's taken 2 to 3 weeks to catch Counterparty up with the Bitcoin blockchain. Right? Counterparty indexes the Bitcoin blockchain the same way that Ordinals does or something like that. And so when you start up your own Counterparty node, you have to catch up with the latest state of the network. And that's been taking 2 to 3 weeks to do, which is impractical.
That's crazy, man. Why does it take so long? Because even doing a full node on Bitcoin maybe takes a couple days. Like, why that long?
Yeah, it was a lack of optimization and just sort of, a slow incremental building of tech debt, right? Tech debt is the word. Older libraries, lack of optimization, and the code base was doing a lot of dumb things that it didn't need to do. And we were very proud that we were able to fix that kind of issue without making any protocol changes, without making any API changes, in a way that actually is transparent to the end user. The end user should not notice a difference. And the only thing that someone who's actually running a node, a developer or something like that, will see is it's faster and better. They're not going to have to deal with a lot of any significant changes to the APIs or the interfaces generally. And that was the goal, is to make it a non-controversial upgrade and just sort of make it easier to run and deploy. And
so what's the ideal time you're hoping to get it down to if somebody wanted to run Counterparty locally for themselves? What's the ideal you guys are hoping to get to?
In a few hours now, I can do a catch up on my MacBook in and that we're pretty happy with. Something you just spin it up, and Bitcoin takes things.
Guys, is Adam rugging for anybody else, or is it just me? He's rugging.
Yeah, it's a bit tapped.
Yep. You guys, but you can hear me okay, right? So I'm not on the ruggy side.
Yep, it's just a connection, it seems.
Yeah, maybe Adam, I don't know if you want to make sure you're on Wi-Fi.
Let me.
I'll pop over to Joe. Joe, welcome on stage, man.
What's going on?
Do you want to continue that little Adam's little conversation there on what's happening with this update?
Yeah, I mean, I've just kind of been watching in the dev chat and kind of seeing what's going on, but I mean, it's like orders of magnitude quicker catching up. I mean, and like Adam said, I mean, it's like Counterparty is over 10 years old at this point, so you end up with a ton of tech debt. I mean, that was the reason when I started working on the new Rare Pepe wallet with like ledger integration, stuff like that. I couldn't even build on my old code base. It was just like, you build these things years ago, and then it's harder to like fix the thing you have rather than just build a new thing. But when it comes to consensus software, you don't get that option. So you have to kind of start from where you are and then really just bring it up to speed. And I think they've done a great job at that. I mean, it's if you look through the like the GitHub repo and like just the amount of like notes and documentation that kind of Adam and the team has kind of put in there, I mean, I would suggest anybody go in there and just check it out. I mean, it's very well done. It's just great. I mean, it's something we've all wanted to see Counterparty get to, and we just haven't been able to up to this point. So it's been great to kind of see us finally go in this direction. I mean, we were all confident Counterparty would last, but we at some point needed kind of someone to come in and kind of clean everything up and make it more efficient and optimize everything. So it's been great to see.
Adam, you back with us?
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, can you hear me better now?
Yep.
Yeah, we got you.
Great, good. Glad. Thanks for the patience. Yeah, thanks, Joe. I agree with all that and appreciate it. I think we made a lot of progress. Yeah, I mean, our goal is to make it really fast and easy to run the Counterparty software. We want to make it much easier for people to build new services on Counterparty. We want it to be cheaper to run nodes for those that are running services on Counterparty, products on Counterparty. We want the ecosystem to grow, and a big part of that is improving the reference implementation, right, which is the back end of all of these services. Next, we're going to be doing things like dramatically upgrading the API to make it much friendlier and more conventional. Right now, it's unusual and weird. We want to improve performance even further. We want to make deployment, one easy step and reliable. Whereas right now, it's still multiple steps. It's still harder than it should be. And we have a line of sight to all of those things.
Interesting. So I have a quick question, then we could kind of dive into the future of Counterparty and stuff. This is I believe the first time we've had you back since you returned to Counterparty. What was that now? Maybe 3-4 months ago. Give us a little bit of insight what it's like returning to, a protocol that you created 9 years ago or 10 years ago at this point. Like, how did you and the team go about assessing this technical debt, and how do you, kind of compartmentalize the different areas that need attention and go about building it to kind of, that original vision 10 years ago?
Yeah. It's really been a nice experience. A very pleasant, beautiful experience seeing the different things that are used and why they're used and how they're used, and then things that aren't used, right? A lot of the original functionality in Counterparty that we built and spent a lot of time on is just sort of not important to people. The trustless gaming, for instance, rock, paper, scissors, that ended up being something like a proof of concept. But the token issuance is super important, right? And dispenser logic, which has been, it was added after I left, has been super important and just heavily used. And so seeing that the patterns of usage is really nice. And then also there's been a lot of cases where I've looked back at sort of decisions that I made very early on and said, that was a bad decision. I shouldn't have done that. That was, inexperience or what have you. And sort of being, frustrated on my end, sort of saying, wow, I really want to, I want to fix that. I want to make it better. And, it could be better. There's no reason it has to be that way. And in some cases there's been, a culture built around it, right? Sort of an expectation that things are going to be that way, even when it just doesn't have to. And then there are other cases where I've looked back and said, wow, that was prescient, right? To include that feature. And it actually has kept things working in a way that I maybe hoped, but didn't expect.
Give us an example of that, of one that you thought it was going to work, but didn't work. And now you're having second thoughts or want to change it.
Yeah. The biggest one is the API. The Node API is, very it's leaky. It's sort of the design is such that it exposes the internal workings of the implementation in a way that makes it harder to use and harder to maintain. And it would be and you've already seen people work around this, right? So for instance, Jeremy J-Dog with his xchain.io block explorer built his own API on top of Counterparty, his own interface, because the Counterparty API is just not very well designed. I didn't design that well. I left out a bunch of sort of normal ways that you would interact with the backend service, and then I added some unconventional ways that sort of worked, but had costs, unnecessary costs. and so we're going to fix that. We're going to, make the API much more flexible, extensible, and powerful, while simultaneously providing a very smooth upgrade path, of course, for all users and downstream products. We don't want to break anything. The users come first, and we're going to figure out a way of elegantly migrating from the existing system, which is just imperfect in that regard, to one that is much, much easier to use.
Do you feel like a lot of this is just, you're a more experienced developer now, you've done a lot more stuff, and this is kind of just looking back and you just like realizing, oh, wow, I was young and inexperienced, or this is just generally what happens from a development perspective over time. And this is just a natural evolution of that sort of thing.
Yeah, that case and a couple others were an experience on my part. And then again, there's this seeing, wow, okay, I didn't think that people would use.
Yeah, it's just the timing, right? It's like you're taking guesses at the time on what you think is ideal, right?
I mean, Bitcoin 2.0 and Web 3 evolved in a way that I did not necessarily expect, right? Tokens and NFTs became much, much more important than I initially expected. I expected contracts for difference everywhere, right? And it ended up being DAOs and automated market making, right? Like other things. And so Counterparty, I think, should shift to meet the demand and to get back on the cutting edge.
Well, what do you think's the number one thing right now, or maybe the top two things that you would, if you could wave a magic wand, Counterparty would do right now?
Mm-hmm. The two things, I mean, we talked about this a little bit last time. The two things are, one, better integration with Bitcoin, the Bitcoin token. And that means atomic swaps, effectively.
Yep.
It means not having to go through the sort of rigmarole that you currently have to go through in order to trade any Bitcoin token, or any ordinal for that matter, with any counterparty asset. It means being able to do that atomically in a single block. And we have a preliminary design for that. Thanks to Derp, who's online, I think. Thank you. The other thing is on the extensibility functionality side, which is, of course, a virtual machine. There's, every blockchain and its brother has a virtual machine in the smart contract language, but there are a lot of reasons to think that we can do a better job, and one that will, of course, by being on Counterparty, provide deep integration with Bitcoin and the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Go ahead, Dogfather.
Yeah, just a question to Adam. I'm just a simple dog, and let me try to understand the first point. Would that mean with the atomic swaps that you can, let's say, swap a BRC20 towards some, Pepe Cash and vice versa, or would that be easier for, let's say, a Magic Eden or Xverse Ordinal wallet to integrate counterparty assets?
Adam, I think your mic's muted.
Sorry, I didn't hear Dogfather talk at all.
Repeat the question, Dogfather. Wait, can you hear him or not? You can't hear him at all.
I can't. No, I can hear you, Adam, but I can't hear Dogfather.
Oh, you can't hear Dogfather?
No.
Repeat the question for me. Go ahead.
Let me just repeat, and maybe if it's not working for Adam, then maybe the Adam.
Yeah, I'll translate. I'll translate.
It's silent for me. I can't hear him.
All right, give me a sec. Give a sec. He'll ask, and I'll answer it again. Go ahead, Dogfather.
So the question would be, with the atomic swaps, would it then be easier for Xverse, Magic Eden Wallet, and the like to integrate counterparty assets that they can also trade there, that you can also swap them, let's say, for a BRC20 versus Pepe Cash token and the like? Gotcha.
So, Adam, the question is atomic swaps. Would it work in a way that, like, you could get Xverse integration where you would be able to, trade counterparty assets for, in theory, like BRC20s and that sort of thing? Is that possible?
Yes, it is. Pretty much any Bitcoin token that works at the level of UTXOs, any kind of colored coins architecture, would be tradable, and again, atomically, trustlessly, directly tradable.
Now, Joe, I saw in my timeline popped up. Did you make some upgrades with Rare Pepe Wallet that allow some additional functionality with trading? I didn't look into it too much, so I apologize for that. But I saw it pop up on my timeline.
Yeah. I mean, I added the DEX, so it was actually the feature that kind of made Rare Pepes what they are, really. I mean, it was you could make them and then you could trade them. I mean, that was a feature in the original wallet that just hadn't made it over to the newer version. So yeah, the DEX is there now. You can use the Counterparty DEX, and you could use a hardware wallet basically to make your DEX trades. And I'm going to build out a nice little interface so you can, for just like discovery. But yeah, it's basically I gotta put all the features of the old Rare Pepe wallet in the new Rare Pepe wallet, so I can slowly sunset the old one and get everybody migrated to the new one. But until it has all the functionality, I can't do that.
So give us because I know a lot of people have never used the DEX on Counterparty. Give us like a real kind of high level how it kind of functions for the average user if they wanted to try and use the DEX rather than dispensers.
Yeah, I think I mean the big difference is at least the way I did it in Rare Pepe Wallet, I didn't include Bitcoin. You can use Bitcoin with the DEX. It's a little clunky, and I think it's one of the reasons why we're going to go toward the sort of PSBT model that the like UTXO based tokens use. But yeah, so that I like to look at the DEX as kind of just this like internal counterparty market. So basically trading tokens for tokens. I mean, it really was the way that like Rare Pepes were able to like grow and like prosper even back in 2016, 2017. And it really is as easy as like you create your order. So you either your buy order or your sell order. I mean, they're all kind of the same because there's something on either end. So it's you're either buying XCP and selling a Pepe, or you're buying a Pepe and selling XCP. Yeah, you get these little order books with each Pepe, and you can like very easily trade. And what's nice about it is that in and of itself is atomic. Like it's the problem comes in with Bitcoin just because like Bitcoin's not aware of Counterparty, right? So but Counterparty is aware of Counterparty. So you can have these atomic swaps within Counterparty itself. And that's been I mean, you've been able to do that since day one. So one of the reasons I wanted to do it too is to kind of just like demonstrate that we have this cool DEX functionality in Counterparty that's been there forever. And it's just it's never really been like super easy to use. But at least like within Rare Pepe Wallet, and now where I've integrated it in the new Rare Pepe Wallet is it's as easy as just you find the Pepe you want, and then you open up the market, and you can either buy it if it's for sale, or if it's a little too expensive, you can put your own order up and say you want to buy it for whatever amount you want. So it kind of like it really is that circular ecosystem that everybody wants in crypto, but it's all within Counterparty itself. So I mean, it's one of the reasons why I can never hold on to like XCP or Pepe Cash, because I always just go buy more Pepes with it. So that's been the case for at least the last 8 years. So I'm very rich in Pepes. I'm very poor in XCP and Pepe Cash.
Well, it's the one. I mean, I think the integration with Bitcoin, that's like the magic key, right? It's when that happens, that'll be this kind of massive unlock, because it just allows Bitcoin to flow kind of easily, which I think is obviously for a long time has been this difficulty that ordinals actually, I think, was ordinal's superpower, was that it had this ability for Bitcoin to interact with it natively. So that's interesting. Do we have an ETA or I know devs don't like to give ETAs, but Adam, do we have like a rough estimate on when this might be rolled out? Maybe by quarter or what part of this year? Maybe.
Yeah, it is hard to give ETAs. I would say I would hope for late summer. That would be sort of my expectation.
And will that be? Is that like a hard fork, or is that, you know, how does that work as far as Counterparty goes?
Yeah,
Is that
Counterparty? Mhm.
Go ahead.
It's a protocol change.
Yes.
Counterparty doesn't have hard and soft forks because it doesn't have miners. It's just a protocol change, an upgrade, but it shouldn't affect any other existing functionality of the system. I wouldn't expect.
So once you have this upgrade and, you know, you add PSBD support and you can purchase, you know, Counterparty native assets on chain with Bitcoin, what type of, I guess we'll go through maybe some of the similarities and differences, or maybe strengths and weaknesses of what Counterparty can offer, you know, maybe a year from now, that maybe Bitcoin ordinals or atomicals or some of these other protocols that have been proliferating on Bitcoin may not be able to offer here. Is there anything that comes to mind as you build out Counterparty that there will be some very glaring strengths for the protocol?
Yeah, good question. I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and I think it's really that right now you have the blockchain projects sort of split into two categories, specifically the layer 2 blockchains. They're either something like ordinals or colored coins, where you have deep integration with Bitcoin, but a very limited set of functionality. Ordinals you can issue directly on Bitcoin. You can, you know, you're working with UTXOs, you can just swap atomically with Bitcoin, etc. But you don't have smart contracts, right? All you can do is sort of mint and transfer, maybe a couple extra little things, but you're limited. And then you have alt chains, and then you have and other layer 2s that use side chains or other sort of architectures, where you effectively have another blockchain that links to Bitcoin in some way. And these blockchains, these projects have the advantage that they can have much more functionality. They can have a full virtual machine, they can have full extensibility, full scriptability, and the set of use cases is much larger. Counterparty, because of its architecture, has the best of both worlds. And that hasn't been fully realized because the development has been slow for the past however many years, 8 years. The integration with Bitcoin hasn't happened yet, or, you know, it's still slow and clunky through the DEX. And the smart contracts that are on Counterparty are, you know, 9 and hard coded, but there's no reason whatsoever that we can't build the atomic swaps and then add the extensibility that comes with the smart contract language and virtual machine to Counterparty, and then you'll have the best of both worlds. You'll have the integration with Bitcoin that something like Ordinals has, and you'll have all of the functionality and extensibility that a smart contract platform like Ethereum provides.
Wow. Can we make that happen by next month? Is that possible?
Oh yeah, it's version 11 coming out next week.
Version 11 next week.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know Counterparty had EVM capabilities prior. I know JDog had built this out and then had removed it. I know Shannon with Emblem Vault had experimented with this back in 2021, I believe. What's kind of your opinion then on this, you know, cross-chain kind of, you know, I guess capabilities that you're integrating here? Right, the world now, or I guess the crypto industry now, people are interacting with multiple chains per day, and the tribalism is kind of, you know, dissipated over time, or maybe it's even going in the opposite direction. What's kind of your opinion as somebody who's leading Counterparty in terms of using strengths of other chains and kind of adding it or adopting it into Counterparty? Or are you trying to just build out this very Bitcoin-centric protocol?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's a very healthy thing to adopt technologies from other blockchains and bring them over to, you know, to Bitcoin or to other blockchains as well. I think that it's to a large extent one ecosystem. I mean, we did the proof of concept of the EVM on Counterparty way back when, and that was a really healthy thing. It proved that it was possible that you could have smart contracts on Counterparty, right? And then that ended up being duplicated by Rootstock and a couple other projects, albeit using a different architecture. And we didn't sort of follow through on that simply because there wasn't enough development resources, right? It just and it would have required maintaining it, and the purpose wasn't clear. Now that smart contracts ecosystem is a little much larger, we have a much better conception as a blockchain ecosystem of what smart contracts can do and why they're useful and what they're for. And so it makes a lot more sense to sort of push forward with that, implement it again properly, not just copying the EVM, and extend Bitcoin in that way, because the Bitcoin ecosystem can profit from that, right? Bitcoin as a whole grows and is healthier when it changes and evolves based upon partly from innovations by other people in the ecosystem. And that's not just adding features, but it's also changes in cryptography. It's upstream open source software development, all sorts of things, right? Open source software generally has always been a vibrant ecosystem with lots of sharing of resources and ideas. And that's a thing to foster. Bitcoin would not have been possible itself without the predecessors of Hashcash and other projects at building out, designing the ideas of smart contracts and digital gold.
I mean, how do you look at all the other L2s kind of popping up right now or trying to pop up on Bitcoin? I mean, my guts, most of them are just going to disappear.
Yeah,
we know Counterparty's not going anywhere. Do you think, are you looking at it kind of in this way, that there's like real opportunity for Counterparty here to step in?
Yeah, I think it's a good time. Right, people are excited about it, but there are a lot of Johnny-come-latelys. There's a lot of hype and sort of questionable VC involvement in all of these layer twos that are showing up now.
Yeah,
and a lot of rehashing of old ideas, but with new branding, which I don't really love. I like it when people push things forward, when there's real innovation, when people say, "Hey, look, here's this thing that we've never done before." Not here's a new proof of X neologism for the exact same idea that someone tried 7 years ago, but with the latest hype.
Well, well, one thing that goes along with this, and it's kind of the sticking point. And I know there's been a lot of debate in the various Telegram channels about XCP and the future of XCP. And there's this, I don't know if we call it a clash, but there's kind of multiple camps in the view of like, how should XCP be used, within the Counterparty ecosystem and stuff like that. And what's your kind of, and these things evolve over time. So I'm not trying to like paint you into a box, like this is your definitive answer, but where do you feel it lives right now in the ecosystem?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right now XCP is in a bit of a limbo. It's a critical part of the protocol, but only for some smaller functionality, and then with small hard-coded fees, right? And Counterparty itself, because it hasn't changed a lot over the past 8 years, XCP hasn't evolved in accordance with it, and the value of the currency hasn't been obvious. Normally, a currency of a blockchain is attached to future demand, right? Like the value is associated with the speculated amount of future demand, and the future demand for XCP and Counterparty was nil because the development was very slow, and there was no integration with any powerful features that people were excited to use. That's changing now. Now that we're adding things like the integration with Bitcoin through atomic swaps, smart contract language, other features, etc., the utility for XCP becomes much clearer, and all of the sort of limbo state that XCP has been in has been exacerbated by the lack of exchange support, right? The fact that it's been completely illiquid, and so it's sort of been a awkward hurdle to jump over in order to get your token through a dispenser, more or less, right? And that's not ideal. It should be useful and integrated into the protocol, right? Into computation on the protocol, into actual burden on the network, right? As a proper incentive mechanism, and it should be able to be acquired and traded appropriately, and integrated with and associated with the future value of the protocol itself.
So how do you envision that looking?
Yeah, I mean, so for instance, with atomic swaps, that's a feature which adds a significant burden to the network, right? It's an extra complexity, extra computation, and it's my opinion that there should be a XCP fee associated with that, with those transactions, with the swaps, precisely for that reason. However, it should also be dynamic, right? It should be based upon load and actual usage. It shouldn't start off high and be a barrier to entry for anyone trying to use atomic swaps, right? Which everyone should be able to use. But rather it should start off low, and only when it becomes in usage an actual computational burden on the network should there be a fee to sort of balance the supply and demand. That's the kind of thing that I think is pretty clear, but because of the history of Counterparty, it hasn't been the case, and sometimes the associations are funny. So an example of that is dispensers. Dispensers are a heavy feature which a lot of people use, and actually add a significant burden to the network in terms of performance, but there's no XCP fee attached to it. And that's strange to me.
Yeah.
And then finally, I'll say, like, all the smart contract stuff. The XCP can and should serve as the gas for that smart contract computation.
So if it lives as kind of the gas, is there a way to make it? And we've run into this with Emblem Vault. Like, we have a token that was used to create vaults, and we realized that it was a big burden on users to have to go out, acquire the token in order to create vaults. And so we created kind of an automated way where, people could just use Ethereum or ETH, for example, and it would kind of automatically, in this case, I could use Bitcoin, but it would automatically buy the XCP for me and do that kind of thing automatically behind the scenes. Is that the kind of ideal situation that you're envisioning?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
It should be easy and transparent to acquire XCP if you're going to use it. I want onboarding of users to Counterparty to be seamless. Unfortunately, there's an association that people have in the community between XCP and an association of XCP as a barrier to entry, because it's been so hard to acquire, partly because there's been no centralized exchange support, and partly because the tooling and the automation just hasn't been there. That's just not necessary. It can be transparent, it can be seamless, it can be affordable, and when all of those things are the case, then XCP becomes a thing which strengthens the network the way it does with the way that the native currency does with every other cryptocurrency, rather than this sort of ball and chain that people sort of see it as.
Now currently XCP is used when you create named assets, correct? And it's actually burned, right? When you create. So how would it work in this sort of like smart contract system? If I'm thinking of like, okay, ETH is used, but it's paid to like, it would either be, how would it kind of be moved around the system? It obviously, you wouldn't just be burning it, correct? It would somehow, yeah. Go ahead.
I think the best way to do it is to burn it. Now, to be clear, you're not burning it the way that the original proof of burn happened.
Okay.
With Bitcoin, or Bitcoin, when during proof of burn, this was just a month in January 2014, when Bitcoin were destroyed to create XCP in a trustless, fair, decentralized way originally. That in that case, users would destroy their Bitcoin by sending it to an unspendable Bitcoin address, which then created XCP automatically. That was a destruction of Bitcoin, but it was not a very clean one. When XCP are burned as a fee, they're burned by simply deleting them. There's no unspendable address or actual transaction in that, or separate transaction in that case. I do think that probably the best thing is for XCP to be burned for fees. I'm very much open to other ideas. The issue is that it's hard to come up with another mechanism that's as fair and decentralized.
Yeah.
There aren't any miners to pay. It's not like only some people in the network are doing computation. You can't. The nodes don't have an identity in Counterparty, and so because of that, there isn't a natural party to pay.
So there's no way a node operator could, or all the operators somehow get, rewarded in XCP that's used. There's nothing like that even possible to do something like that.
Is it possible? Yes, it would require a significant change to the protocol and some cryptography.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the appropriate solution. It's sort of not even a technical barrier primarily, so much as a would it actually work economically and fit? You have to defend against Sybil attacks, right? You have to defend against someone just spinning up 100 nodes or pretending that they have 100 nodes and then getting paid 100 times more of the fees. There isn't a really elegant or good way to do it. And I don't think that there needs to be. Frankly, I think that burning XCP is totally fine. It can be deflationary. There's not like an insufficient amount of XCP, right? You can always just increase the unit so that you have a larger number, right? There are eight zeros after the decimal place in 1 XCP.
So, one question for me, just as an outsider and kind of playing devil's advocate here, if you're creating friction for the user, right? But it's not actually rewarding. There's no reward on the other side other than for existing kind of XCP holders because they're now holding like a deflationary asset. Is that just the benefit though? It's like, oh, well, there's a bunch of people here or people here who are going to know about this in advance are going to, in theory, want to go out and get XCP because this is a deflationary asset. So they're the ones that are going to benefit. Like, how do you look at that? You know what I'm saying? Like would be kind of
so we sort of have this idea that with that the people who are running the nodes should be benefiting directly, right? Because they're the ones who are spending the energy to do the computation. That's not the case even with Bitcoin, right? If you're running a Bitcoin node, you're not paid. You're only paid in Bitcoin. You only get the fees, the block reward, if you're actually mining, which is of course infinitely more computationally intensive than simply running a node. You can mine Bitcoin without running a node, and you can run a node without being a miner. And the burning of XCP and the deflation of XCP is something which strengthens the ecosystem as a whole, right? It adds value to this token, which is integrated or should be integrated into all of the features of the protocol, which is which is used for multiple features in the protocol and will be used for even more as we add features.
What about this? What about it doesn't get burned, it gets put into address, and then whoever used the protocol over the last month, it gets sent out like a magic lotto to somebody every month, and there's like this magic distribution of XCP to users. How's that sound?
Yeah. I really am open to alternative ways of distributing the fees. I think it's hard to do that without centralization, right?
Sure.
And it's hard to do that without allowing it to be gained. And I think fairness and decentralization are the most important thing, frankly, when it comes to a trustless, permissionless system like Counterparty. Yeah, and I think you need you just need a native token, right? The native token is going to be integrated into everything, things that you can't do with Bitcoin itself, and you can create virtuous cycles in the valuation of the token vis-a-vis the adoption of features, the incentivization mechanisms, etc. You can actually have users get paid for holding XCP, for using XCP, for trading XCP, etc.
You're saying XCP is a utility token is, I guess, the buzzword to describe it. Also, if anyone wants to come on stage and ask any questions, please just go ahead and request. Adam, one of the questions that I have surrounds the funding of the development team or, just yourself. A common issue a lot of development teams face is that at some point they lack funding. We see, Casey with Ordinals talk about this, and this isn't just a Bitcoin thing. This is just a general protocol developer kind of issue. is there a plan for, you and the team to, add some sort of funding mechanism to the protocol so that you can sustain this development here? I mean, at this point, I'm assuming you're kind of just self-funding this, but that can't go on forever, right?
Yeah, I think it's also a challenge that other cryptocurrencies have, and I think that we want to take inspiration from them, albeit avoiding the pitfalls of subversion of the decentralized nature of those coins by special interests, let's call it. So right now we see a few different things. The most important funding for the protocol hasn't, and I think should be, businesses built on top of it. And we've seen a lot of that, right? Companies that are building products and platforms on top of Counterparty itself are incentivized to contribute development, the way that Intel is contributing to Linux, right? And we see that elsewhere in the blockchain space. The second thing is you have a lot of volunteers, right? Ultimately, it's open source, and ultimately people are using it and enjoying it, and it becomes an important part of their lives. The third is donations, right? It's just sort of people actually contributing to it because they think it's a cool thing. And so far we've had very happy to say very positive community engagement funding a part-time developer recently who's started working on replacing who's improving the protocol and improving the reference implementation significantly. The community contributed, I think it was 0.75 Bitcoin already for that developer, and they're working madly on improving Counterparty in a way that everyone using it will benefit from. I think that will continue. I think that's how Bitcoin works, and I think that's by default the paradigm.
It's really glad to hear that. We'll go to Chris and then Dogfather.
Oh yeah, so it's really kind of crazy. It's only been about 2 months since your official return. We had you on the show. You were ecstatic about pushing these developments and kind of pushing Counterparty forward. And you've really been firing off and gotten this far in just those 2 months. And within that same time frame, Bitcoin infrastructure and investment has really exploded as well. Have you seen any spillover in terms of developer interest and investment interest within Counterparty as kind of being around in that time frame? And how has your expectation so far been from the workload that you expected and where we are today?
You're muted.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of excitement, right? People building new products on top of it. We've seen new block explorers. We've seen new wallet projects. We've seen these kinds of things that show people's excitement at how Counterparty is changing and evolving and becoming easier to build on. Right now, the protocol development is relatively limited to a few developers, right? Myself and Uziel Slama and a few others that are sort of working closely with each other to push it forward. But it's also, but the ecosystem as a whole has been growing. It's just not that big of a code base. This is sort of a surprising thing, right? Like there are a lot of significant, because Counterparty leverages Bitcoin so heavily, because it doesn't have to do any networking, any mining, etc. It just piggybacks on all of that. You can actually make really rapid improvements, meaningful improvements to the protocol itself. And so it isn't a huge development burden the way that other projects are or can be. And that's been really helpful. That's sort of a really important thing. And that's sort of how Counterparty was able to get started so fast at the end of 2013 into 2014. It didn't require a lot of resources. And I think that, I know people that are excited to engage in the development of the protocol itself for all of the features that I've already mentioned. And then, yeah, there's more excitement on the ecosystem side, on the infrastructure side.
Dogfather, go ahead, man.
Yeah, just Adam, can you hear me now? Because I just logged in again.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, perfect. So then it at least had some impact. So chiming in on Adam McBride's, devil advocate part. I mean, if you compare Counterparty to the Bitcoin ordinal space, I heard two main arguments at the beginning why it really boomed so much. One was the on-chain nature of the metadata, and the second one, there's no quote unquote shitcoin being used. So many people hated XCP and just wanted to have a pure play Bitcoin experience. What do you respond to these people outside of the Counterparty community? How can you win them?
Yeah,
over, I would say.
Yeah, no, it's a thing I hear, and it's disappointing to hear because I think it's based on a number of important misunderstandings. The first is that, I mean, if any coin is a shit coin, it's not XCP, right? XCP had the fairest launch you could possibly imagine, right? There was no pre-mine. The founders had no particular engagement. It was launched on Bitcoin Talk, and immediately, anyone could destroy Bitcoin, the same way that people destroy energy to mine Bitcoin. And there was even a limit of 1 Bitcoin donated per address, which at the time was not very much. Or contributed rather, and burned. So it was a very, very, very decentralized and fair and trustless launch. The second thing is that is sort of, again, associated with how difficult it is to acquire XCP. There's a negative association with XCP because it's really hard to get right now. And so it feels like it is an actual barrier to entry. And so everyone's just like, why don't we get rid of it? And that's unnecessary, right? That's a historical quirk. The fact that exchange support was dropped because of maintenance, it was just arbitrarily hard to get, and there hasn't been the kind of automation integration that you would expect for seamless purchases of XCP to do other things. And the third is that XCP is just necessary. You can't do everything you need to do with Bitcoin because Bitcoin as a protocol isn't changing and isn't aware of all of the features that Counterparty has and will have. A lot of the things that Counterparty today has theoretically, like it's sort of an economic question of whether or not you could do it or do it as well with Bitcoin. But a lot of the things you just simply can't. The reason that the DEX works great for Counterparty assets and doesn't work great with Bitcoin, as Joe was talking about, is simply because they're native tokens, because XCP is a native token. And there isn't a way of making the DEX work the same way with pure Bitcoin. There's a way around that with atomic swaps, but even that doesn't create a proper order book the way that the DEX does. It does allow for atomic swaps that are faster and easier, and that's why it'll be a meaningful improvement. But having a native token is really a requirement for all of the advanced features of Counterparty. It's not something that can or should be desirable to be gotten rid of.
Interesting. Let's go to Unfuddable. What's up, man? You're muted.
Hey, bro. I'm curious to know what's going on with Bells. If we could get an update on what's going on with the Twitter and what's going on with the merge mining.
All right, bro. We're gonna. This is a Counterparty space, but I appreciate you. Maybe on tomorrow's show. Why don't you tune in tomorrow, 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Maybe we'll get into some market talk. We'll talk a little bit about Bells and what's happened with Bells. That is a shitcoin. This is not. This is Counterparty. We're talking Counterparty, bro. Tomorrow, man. We'll get into it tomorrow. So if anybody else wants to join this space, come on up. Ask Adam questions. Talk about the future of Counterparty. Just raise your hand. Love to chat about it. It's interesting, and I do think, from a user perspective, just to follow up on what Dogfather was saying, there is this idea of, well, I don't even want to have to buy this. I just want to be able to use, Counterparty, which I totally understand. I think from a development standpoint, the ability to make it invisible, I'll transact in XCP if it's completely invisible. I think that would be like the superpower. If I could encourage you guys to build that in a way where it's invisible, people don't care. Like they'll use any token on earth if it's invisible and painless, right? I think that's the main thing that I would put out there for you to, and I'm sure you've heard it before, right? It's just this, people want stuff frictionless. And what we've seen with Solana over the last, couple weeks, the idea of this frictionless system is kind of where the market's going. That's what people want, right? Not to say it is frictionless, because as I've tweeted about it, my Solana experience has had an incredible number of, failed transactions, buggy tech, not great experiences. It actually reminded me a lot of Ethereum, to be frank, over the last week. So yeah, anyway, Pilot just joined. What's up, man? How you doing, brother?
Hey, man. Yeah, I just wanted to say I just completely agree with where you're coming from and just the importance of the lack of friction. And I actually had an experience today where I've been very hesitant or not wanting to use Ethereum layer 2 chains and I've only used them when I've absolutely had to, because on things like Polygon and Matic, to use those networks, you have to buy Polygon and Matic.
Yeah.
And then you have to use Polygon and Matic for the gas. And then today, when I went to mint the Xcopy NFT that's done, I think this 500,000 mints.
Wow, is it up to 500 already? I knew it was at 300 when I tweeted it. Yeah,
something like that. But
yep.
What that showed, but what was interesting about that is when I went to use Base, they use Ethereum as the gas currency. You don't need to buy Base token. So that was just totally backs up what you're talking about there.
Yeah.
If Xcopy had gone and done this on Polygon and everyone had to go and buy Polygon, yes, because it's Xcopy, people would have done. But there's no way it would have done the numbers that it's done on Base. And what was just so interesting to me about Base is that now, again, whereas I'd be kind of, Coinbase's chain, too centralized, blah, blah, blah. Now I'm thinking, hold on, Ethereum, layer 2, with all everything you're hearing about how the recent upgrades have made Ethereum layer 2 super cheap. But now you don't even need to buy an extra currency. You get to use your first currency, Ethereum. And I just thought there's so many similarities to what we're talking about here with Counterparty. And if there's a way that it can be done that people can have all the benefits of a layer 2, if that's what you call Counterparty, or if it's a second protocol, I don't know the correct terminology. But if there's a way we can have all the benefits of Counterparty, but you just can't underestimate how much that extra step can hold back everything you're trying to do. Like there's Polygon, they did so, they had Starbucks signed up to Polygon for NFTs, and now that's pulled out. They had so many projects that were going to launching on Polygon, and I'm convinced it's always that extra step of the bridging, the extra step of having to buy that extra token. It's a step too far for normies. It's a step too far for me, who's been in the space as long as I have. And you can say, you're just being lazy then, Pilot. No, it's not about laziness. It's just something about, like, I shouldn't have to make that extra step if I don't need to make that extra step when I'm trying to do something very similar, buy art on a different chain. So I don't feel like, so if I have to do the extra step here, if someone said to you, which bank are you going to join? But this bank, when you go in, you have to do X, Y, and Z, whereas this bank, you don't. People go for the easier option. So I'm all for, Counterparty being properly funded. And, but like you said, if there's a way that it can be done invisibly, so you get the benefit of, Counterparty token doing well, and then I'm all for it. But I just think, like, please realize that extra step, is going to really hold you back, in my opinion.
You've heard the side there, Adam. What do you make of it?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't hear the beginning of the question, but I caught the end of it, and I agree with it. Right, I really do think that the frictionlessness is important, right? And that is a historical quirk, that it is so hard to get XCP, and that it hasn't been, and that the tooling hasn't been sufficiently good around it. It can be good, it can be better. There's no reason it needs to be hard, and that's the thing that, I mean, frankly, it's just something that happened over the past 8 years, that everyone figured out how to build proper wallets and tooling for cryptocurrency. Back in 2013, 2014, 2015, it was just hard to do everything. And the expectation of frictionlessness, that what people knew was possible, was much lower. One of the things that Ethereum did right, early, was just having really, really, really good tooling. The wallets were great, right? Browser extensions, and well designed, and just generally user friendly. A lot of things that I don't think they did do great, but they did do that well. And while Counter Wallet, was the primary wallet for Counterparty, has been, was totally state of the art in 2014. Now it's not. In fact, it's been down for the past few months.
Actually, yeah, give us an update on what's going on with Counter Wallet, because I know that somebody had taken it on to try and repair it. What's the current ETA on that?
Yeah, it's not that hard to fix it. I mean, there was a bug that was introduced into the protocol some number of months ago, at the end of last year, I think, that broke Counter Wallet. And there was a lot of discussion among the developers of Counterparty at the time, about what to do, whether to fix it in the protocol, fix it in Counterparty, and work around it. And there was no conclusion it was come to. The correct solution is to fix it in the protocol, which we did, and not actually the protocol. It's actually just the database, and we fixed that. But we still have an alpha. We haven't done the full release yet.
Gotcha.
I think the community members have. I was hoping there would be sort of more proactiveness, I would say, to get it up and running. I think that it is now time to get it back up and running. And if we have to do it, then we'll do it. It's just a critical piece of tooling for the ecosystem at this stage. Even though there are many other good wallets, they don't tend to have all of the features that Counter Wallet does. And so if someone doesn't bring it up in the next week, then we'll do it.
I had one more comment.
Go for it, bro.
So, I get that I'm hearing that, Counterparty, having its own token, being separate, and the things it can do is, part of the beauty of it. But then I think that, say, Polygon on Ethereum, when they were kind of saying we're a layer 2, we're built on top of it, and we're going to be better than what you can do on Ethereum. But when I see or other projects that have tried to be that, improve what was already there, but they still see the importance of getting, say, everything we're doing on Polygon's great, but we need to be connected to, for example, Magic Eden. So on Magic Eden, you have the tap at the top, you've got Bitcoin, you've got Ethereum, you've got Solana, you've got Polygon. And I'm just saying, sorry if I missed the very start of Spaces, but as much as trying to bring people to Counterparty, that seems the best way to bring people to something is you've got to kind of show up top on the Google search engine. I don't mean literally, but I mean you've got to be showing up where the people already are. So that's just one example. Are there plans? How far away are we from, say, seeing a Counterparty tab on Magic Eden? To me, the fact that they're like the home of Bitcoin NFTs, when the oldest NFTs that to me are just by far the most desirable, on Magic Eden seems absolutely crazy to me. But more just a general point of if Counterparty is going to be a layer 2, if it's going to be, but just, what more can we do to make people aware of it and use it and see it without just forcing them to have to come to us? Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, totally agreed. I think that kind of integration and collaboration and support and communication is really critical. For my part, I'm going to do whatever I can to support that. Yeah, I mean, happy to reach out in general. I think that I know that I'm going to be heavily involved in whatever it takes to get XCP and counterparty assets generally integrated again into centralized exchanges. But these NFT marketplaces are very important for the ecosystem. And I will do whatever I can and very much open to concrete suggestions.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, like, look, there's almost like two sections to that pilot. It's like there's the devs and what the devs can do, which is like building out the PSBT and stuff, which will facilitate kind of trading and things like that. But then there's the other things. It's like, well, what's the important stuff? And the important stuff are, rare Pepes. We've just been joined by Shaban from Spells of Genesis. So Spells of Genesis is like, what are the important things happening, on Counterparty, right? And I think that's a whole nother conversation. I mean, obviously the history on Counterparty, which obviously Pilot, you're a big collector of, it's, I think the tech, they work together. It's like the tech will facilitate the explosion on, Magic Eden or whatever, where, you'll be able to trade rare Pepes and Spells of Genesis and that sort of thing. And so, Shaban, man, good to see you, man. How you doing, brother?
Great. Yeah, thanks for having me. And I wanted to react and ask a question. So we're talking about the tech part and how Counterparty can be more visible, but there is also an important part, which is the marketing, branding, marketing, positioning. And of course, ordinals make it a little bit, I would say, organically, but Ethereum, they have a brand, they have a logo, they have a strong website. So I think in order to grow, we need also to take this part into account. So maybe Adam, so I know you're building hard, but is there any opportunities for, I would say, people who are more in communication to participate as well?
Yeah, 100% agreed there as well. Yeah, there is. Reach out. Would love to work with you.
Nice. I know we had.
Great.
Do you have a follow-up, Shaban, or you're good?
Yeah, I think, thanks. And I think we'll carry on the discussion in order to make Counterparty great again.
Yeah, awesome, man.
Yeah, no, I don't mean to be too brief. I fully agree. Like, I think that communication is really important. I mean, some of it's basic, like the website, the documentation, the forums, the Telegram, all this sort of stuff, right? I've been trying to do what I can there. I mean, I just had the website moved over to a new platform, and because it was out of date and hard to maintain, the documentation all needs to be rewritten. But I think that there's a lot of opportunity for people that have more experience and a skill set focused around marketing, communications, etc., to work with us. And to help Counterparty move forward. I don't want Counterparty to be corporate, right? I want it to be as organic as possible, etc. But having that skill set, contributing to this open source project is a community-driven project is critical. And for what it's worth, like the website copy, all the documentation is all open source. It's on GitHub. If someone wants to contribute on the communication side, then they should absolutely feel free to reach out, and would love to collaborate with them. Awesome. Let's go to Dave. I know you popped up here. You have a question? You're muted if you're trying to talk. All right, maybe not. Hallucifile, what's up, man? Haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah, hey, thanks for calling on me. I joined like 15 minutes after the beginning, unfortunately, but I'm trying to follow along with what everybody's saying, and I really want to contribute my perspective, however valid it wants to be questioned. There were some big personalities involved before Adam came back, and I feel like one of the concerns that was addressed when we met up in Barcelona at HNFT was this is a vehicle in motion. It's already on the rails, and some of us were concerned that it was getting off track. And I really want to put perspective in the idea that this is a 10-year anniversary, that this is version 10.0, and that this is a major milestone. I just like to use one metric as an example, is the amount of time it took to become a node before the recent improvements were made, and then use that metric to understand why it wasn't adopted by centralized exchanges, why, and this is one of the questions I asked myself since I got involved, is how come every project that turned profitable left Counterparty? How come they would go to Ethereum? How come they would go to some other, and I'm sorry, outside of Counterparty, everything's a shitcoin to me. And so anyways, I just want to say personally from the bottom of my heart, thank you to Adam for returning. And I really appreciate, above everything, above his improvements, above his dedication, is his willingness to have these hard conversations, because there are people, myself included, of course, who have strong opinions, and I can be dissuaded. I like facts, but he's been navigating this, and that's probably the most demanding part. And I want to say thank you to Adam, and I appreciate everything that he's been doing.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, it's certainly difficult conversations. I mean, even well, look, the basic one about XCP, this is a really, really difficult conversation, because obviously big bag holders of XCP, these were the people who started, and were there at the beginning of Counterparty, right? And so it is a tough thing to talk about and to try and navigate through. And that navigation is congrats to you on being able to do this and keep the community together, because it could very easily fracture into people who are like, no, just do what Ordinals is doing, and just do away with, just take Counterparty, take XCP completely away. It'd be very easy to, just fall into this, completely split the community. And, navigation, this sort of stuff is, it's hard. Dave, you're back up, man. Can you speak this time?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, man, we got you now.
Sweet. I have a question that kind of, it's kind of based in some previous thoughts of updates for using Counterparty, the token XCP, and Pilot kind of mentioned it with other places kind of just just pay the Ethereum fee, and using other tokens is it's kind of invisible, like he said that word. I'm just kind of thinking in the future for when atomic swaps get active in the protocol, as well as partially signed Bitcoin transactions, kind of imagining that XCP will be a lot easier to buy. You won't have to go through a dispenser or the DEX, or have to go to some other exchange, etc. Do you foresee a time where somebody could theoretically, in that future circumstance, just kind of use their wallet, pay Bitcoin, and it kind of uses an atomic swap to buy the exact amount of XCP to mint a token? Do you think that in the future there'll be a little bit less friction when it comes to getting XCP? And do you think atomic swaps will help that?
Yeah, 100%. That, as far as I'm concerned, the transparent purchase of XCP in your wallet should be a critical feature. If you're trying to do something and all you have is Bitcoin, then it should just happen automatically. I guess I don't like the word invisible, right? I guess people should sort of know what they're doing, right? I don't think people should think that they're buying something with Bitcoin if it's going through XCP. But I think it should be seamless and transparent, where the wallet says this is what's happening, and this is how long it's going to take, and these are the fees you're paying, et cetera, et cetera. But making that getting to that level of usability is 100% a top priority. And again, I think we have line of sight to doing that with atomic swaps with new wallet projects, all of these things.
Yeah, maybe not invisible, but frictionless, I guess, would be the key to talk, get into what Pilot was talking about. Damien came up on stage. What's up, man?
Hey, how you doing? I came up on stage mostly to post my ideas, but what about any of the Lightning features? Is that ever going to be implemented in any of these kind of layer 2 implementations like XCP. Let me just back up. XCP, the node. Is there a Docker already available for it? That was my number one question. The new code, is that coming out in Docker form by any chance?
Yes, it's in Docker form. There's already a Docker image. Updated Docker images were pushed for address indexers, the middleware dependency, and for Counterparty itself. With the alpha, actually, I think there was a bug in the Counterparty alpha Docker container, which was just fixed. I think a few people in the community ran into that with the daemon RPC host. So update your Docker images. Uziel fixed that a couple hours ago. And thanks for beta testing or alpha testing. And then on the Lightning side, yes, there are designs for that. Also, Derp has some good ideas there, effectively for transaction rollups, right? Where you merge multiple counterparty transactions into a single transaction using payment channels or cryptography to do that, and that allows you to reduce fees. That's the thing that we're very much looking at doing. It's not the highest priority, but I would say it's a mid priority there. It's going to follow after a number of other features, like adding Taproot support for larger transaction data payloads and the atomic swaps themselves.
Okay, yeah. So it's the SegWit features, right? That's what you're. And then the other thing is atomic swaps would be available. I put the link in there. The first atomic swap to Litecoin happened on Lightning like 6 years ago. If you're able to get to that level, you get Mimblewimble, which is kind of priceless in itself. So just wanted to mention that.
When Mimblewimble.
The idea, I see XCP kind of as like this layer that could actually be very powerful in connecting other value systems. I hear you talking about doing EVM stuff, but how it's going to be hard to be an expert in anything, EVM related, unless you've been already working on it, I guess, for a long time. Whereas if you just tap into these other networks that are already created and they already have their implementations in place, we don't take a risk just by connecting and allowing users. The protocol just gains value. The users of the protocol just gain value if you can just connect to things that have, good features that we could use right away, such as anything EVM compatible. If we can just atomic swap into something EVM compatible through Lightning, that would be amazing. Or any kind of cross-chain implementation, which I guess is where Emblem came in. Not to this is like killing Emblems.
Well, you guys kill Emblem, whatever. We move on to Emblem 2.0, man.
But it's I'm just saying, maybe there's some layer ones that we get access to.
That's right.
Through a layer 2.
Yeah, 100%. I think that there's a lot of possibility there for increasing extensibility. I'm as eager as anyone to get started on adding these features. I want to be very respectful of the existing user base, existing deployment patterns. All of these things need to be, every new feature needs to be added incrementally and on a stable foundation of testing, performance, deployment, etc. That's what we've been focusing on so far, right? For the past 2 months, it's been how do we make it, reliable and safe and fast to run a counterparty node and do your own blockchain validation, which not everyone's been doing because of how slow it was to start up a node. Now that we're doing that, now that we've done that, we have a bit more refactoring to do to make it even easier to deploy, and then we get to start adding the fun stuff, which is these kinds of integrations and features, which will be much more user facing. There's nothing stopping us other than making sure we build on a stable foundation. And the good thing is that foundation is already much more stable than it was, and we're able to move really fast because of the order of operations.
Awesome. So we're going to start wrapping up. Adam, do you want to do you have anything else to kind of update on, or anything we might have missed?
No, I mean, this was great. Thank you guys for having me. And I really appreciate the chance to engage with everyone in this way. I'm really excited about the upcoming upgrade 10.0 and the ones that are coming afterwards. I think that they're gonna be big, and I think that they're going to make it a lot easier for people to build stuff on top of Counterparty. Anyone, if you have trouble doing it, if you can contribute, please let me know directly, Telegram or Twitter. I'm happy to respond and collaborate.
Awesome. Really appreciate all the legends up on stage who came on today, shared the updates. Siobhan, great to see you. Joe, thanks so much for coming up, guys. Appreciate it. And Counterparty moving forward, it's exciting times, man. I mean, this is it's incredible. Like, literally, honestly, I give credit to Ordinals, man. I give credit to Ordinals for kind of reinvigorating Counterparty. It's really awesome to see, the historic Counterparty come back and just be better and stronger than ever, and actually potentially move into the future as just like this really critical part of Bitcoin. It's just amazing to see. Jake, you want to take us out, man?
Yeah, just that I'm actually kind of blown away that a lot of the leaders showed up to this space. It shows that the Counterparty community, it's really devout, it's long-standing, and everyone's really excited about, the future of growing this protocol. We host, spaces with the majority of different communities across Bitcoin, and every time we host a Counterparty spaces, it's everybody from the community, whether you're a builder, a collector, a developer, or just somebody who's interested in the protocol. Everyone shows up. So I'm excited to see where it goes in terms of, adding PSPT support, EVM support, smart contract, and so on. And I know we're all built together. So, as Damien mentioned, right, different things could be introduced that, eliminate certain business models, and we can always introduce other things around it. So we're all here to build together. And Adam, appreciate you for coming on. You're definitely one of the, I guess you'd say, the co-creators or creators of a protocol who comes in and answers every question, no matter how hard it is. So really appreciate you for every time coming on here.
Thanks a lot. My pleasure.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, Adam, myself, and Chris, who work at Emblem Vault, the leading cross-chain NFT protocol in the industry, got our start with Counterparty, right, with Rare Pepe, as well as a Genesis, and moved on to some of the other UTXO protocols. We host the show Tuesday through Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Tomorrow, we will be back with our inscription market analysis, covering everything from Bitcoin ordinals, atomicals, Counterparty, doginals, etc., all the way down the list of all your favorite inscription, stamps, and Counterparty-like protocols. Until then, everybody, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and we'll be back tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time.